The greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing you will make one. Elbert Hubbard. A single sentence like that is enough to reflect something we rarely dare to face. The weakness within us doesn't come from circumstances, but from the way we train our minds through every small choice, every compromise, every moment we tell ourselves, let's just leave it. It's easier this way. In this video of just about 15 minutes, with the 8 principles ahead, especially the secret in number 5, I won't erase your weakness. Instead, I'll show you that you are the one feeding it day after day. You were not born weak. No one is born weak. Weakness forms little by little, just like leaving a room in darkness, until one day you grow used to it and forget that you're living inside it. You think you lack confidence, courage, and willpower. But the truth is much simpler. You've trained yourself to shrink back every time you had the chance to rise. You step back and call it safety. You turn down an opportunity and tell yourself you're not ready. You stay silent when you should speak, endure when you should stand tall, and then conclude that weakness is your nature. It's not. That is not your nature. It's a habit you've repeated until it became your personality. And if you're brave enough to stay with me for the next few minutes, I'll show you something you may have never heard before. Strength doesn't come from being inspired, but comes from something entirely different. If you're ready, let's begin. 1. Weakness isn't a feeling. It's a habit you've trained for a very long time. We are what we repeatedly do. Aristotle, you're not weak because you're incapable. You're weak because you've lived like a weak person for too long. You've repeated small choices until they became reflexes, staying silent when you should speak, waiting when you should step forward, apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, shrinking yourself just to avoid making others uncomfortable. These repeated actions form an invisible mold around you, and then you mistake that mold for your nature. Weakness is a habit you've unconsciously practiced every day. And while you mourn the strength you think you've lost, you fail to notice that you've worked even harder at training your own withdrawal than at any strength you once hoped for. 2. Strength is born from conflict, not from peace. The obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius. People do not grow when everything is calm. Peace only keeps you exactly where you are. It's conflict. Conflict between you and your fear, between you and the limits you've built around yourself, that generates momentum. Strength never grows in soft soil. It is forged when your mind is cornered and must choose step forward or retreat forever. It's like the eagle's rebirth. When it reaches a certain age, its beak becomes too long and curved, its talons too dull, and its feathers too heavy for flight. If it keeps living comfortably, it'll die slowly in that soft decay. But instead of waiting, the eagle flies to a high cliff and smashes its beak against the rock until it breaks completely. Then it waits for a new beak to grow. After that, it pulls out its old talons and plucks every heavy feather. The entire process is painful, but because of it, the eagle lives for decades more, with new strength, new wings, new speed. Humans are the same. Every time you break through a barrier, even when no one sees it, you feel something inside you becoming harder, clearer, calmer, and harder to break. 3. People are not afraid of pain. They're afraid of the light shining on the parts they haven't dared to face. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Aristotle. Humans are not truly afraid of pain. They can endure pressure, failure, even falls so hard, they seem impossible to recover from. What they find harder to endure is the truth. It's like standing in front of a mirror that's too bright. It doesn't hurt you, but it makes you see. And it's that act of seeing that makes you want to look away. You can endure wounds on your skin, but you can't endure the mirror reflecting the things you've always tried to hide, the procrastination you've excused for years, the dreams you buried so no one could judge them, the abilities you've ignored so you wouldn't have to take responsibility for them. People are not afraid of stumbling. They are afraid of admitting that they have been shrinking themselves. Pain doesn't shake you as much as facing the version of yourself you should have become. And that's why many people choose darkness. Not because darkness is easier, but because in the dark, they don't have to see themselves. Once the light shines in, you can't pretend anymore. You can't keep saying I can't, when the truth is, you simply haven't dared. A climber doesn't give up because the slope is steep, or because their muscles ache, or because the wind is cold. What makes them stop is when they look down and realize they no longer have any excuse to turn back. Because once they see how far they've come, they can no longer say, I can't do this. The fear is not in the mountain. It's in the truth that they can keep climbing. 4. The habit of staying silent weakens you more than saying the wrong thing. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke. It's not wrong words that make you weak. It's excessive silence. The kind of silence that comes from fear, from the habit of withdrawing, from being too used to giving up the truest part of yourself for temporary safety. There are 2 types of silence: the silence of composure and the silence of shrinking. One gives you gravity, the other makes you weightless in your own life. When you stay silent for too long, people forget you have opinions. When you swallow your words too often, you begin to forget you even have a voice. You think silence helps you avoid trouble, avoid conflict, avoid being misunderstood. But in reality, it only erodes your ability to assert yourself. No one can hear you if you don't speak. But more dangerously, you won't hear yourself either if you keep choosing silence out of fear. What makes you weak is not saying the wrong thing. It's not daring to say the right thing. 5. You don't need fewer emotions. You need less self-pity. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Emotions are not your enemy, but energy. It's the fuel that makes you live fully, love deeply, and fight with conviction. What drains you isn't emotion itself, but the way you turn your emotions inward to weaken yourself. Self-pity is like a leak in your fuel tank. No matter how much energy you pour in, it keeps spilling out, leaving you empty and exhausted. You don't need to become cold to become strong. You need to stop telling yourself the old story that you are not enough, unworthy, or misunderstood. Those stories don't heal you. They trap you in an emotional loop that wears you down from the inside. Let emotion pull you forward, not drag you down. When you stop using emotion to pity yourself, you start using emotion to propel yourself. 6. The words you tell yourself are what destroy you from the inside. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. What destroys a person fastest isn't criticism from others. It's the silent dialogue happening inside their own mind. Every phrase you repeat to yourself, I'm useless, I can't do it, I'll fail again, works like drops of dye falling into clear water. At first, it's just a tint, but repeat it long enough, and your entire inner world takes on that same color. Your internal language is the foundation of your destiny. The way you think shapes the way you feel. The way you feel shapes the way you act, and the way you act shapes the direction your life follows. No one needs to hate you if you speak to yourself like an enemy. You make yourself fragile long before the world touches you. Speaking strong words to yourself isn't about being artificially positive. It's about rebuilding your internal operating system. A person with firm self-talk is like a house with deep foundations. Storms may come, but they cannot sweep you away. 7. You grow stronger the moment you stop looking for someone to stand beside you. The man who follows the crowd will never be followed by the crowd. Albert Einstein. Your greatest strength isn't the strength others can see, but the strength you build quietly in the moments when no one is watching. You don't need someone next to you to validate your worth. You don't need a pat on the shoulder. You don't need applause to keep moving. Real strength doesn't rely on witnesses. It relies on the backbone of your own spirit. People don't become weak because they lack ability. They become weak because they want company to feel safe. But safety is not strength. Safety is hesitation wrapped in a feeling of comfort. Some journeys only become clear when you walk them alone, not because the world doesn't understand you, but because the silence of solitude allows you to hear your own voice. No one needs to see your strength for you to be strong, and no one needs to acknowledge you for you to sharpen yourself. Real strength isn't noise. It is the presence of someone who has stopped needing to be seen. 8. Strength is not a result. It is a new identity. We become what we think about. Earl Nightingale. Strength is not something you achieve after a few decisive actions. It isn't a burst of momentum, nor a temporary emotional high. Real strength is a new identity, a deep reconstruction of who you believe yourself to be. It doesn't come from doing courageous things. It comes from becoming the kind of person who is courageous. Any surface-level change is temporary if your inner identity still belongs to the old version of you. To be strong, you can't merely act like a strong person. You must live like one, think like one, choose like one. When identity changes, behavior changes naturally. You no longer try to be strong. You are strong by default. And here's the core truth. Either you rebuild your identity, starting today, or you will continue to use weakness as an excuse to escape every challenge. You cannot carry your old identity and expect a new life. The identity you choose determines the life you receive. In the end, a human being is not just a small figure lost in a vast world. Each person is a miniature universe full of motion, full of contradictions, full of both light and shadow. You are a one-of-a-kind existence, shaped by strengths no one can replicate and abilities only you have the right to unlock. Do not look at your temporary weakness and mistake it for your nature. People compare themselves to others and then shrink themselves to fit a mold they think is theirs. They forget that what makes them special is not what they lack, but what only they possess. And so, if there's one final message, it is this: stop living like a fading star. Live like a universe with its own gravity. That gravity comes from your true strengths, not the strengths others say you should have, but the quiet, persistent qualities only you can feel from within. When you embrace the strongest parts of yourself, weakness is no longer an obstacle. It becomes the ground you stand firmly on. You don't need to prove that you are strong. You only need to stop telling the story that makes you weak. And once you do that, even just a little, you will realize strength has never come from the outside. It has always lived at the center of the universe you carry within.